Hi, I'm Daz, I'm the producer of The Drift, and to sort of give you an update on where we are with stuff. I've now made the first cut of the film and have organised the film into the smaller sections like I described before. So whereas before you might have a sequence of events that are all happening at the same time but you only see one scene at a time, I've started to sort of slice them up and put them together, so we're sort of chopping from sort of one place back to the next, back to the next, back to the next. And although that sounded like a really good idea at the time, and overall that has been quite a successful experiment, it's also sort of exposed some areas where it really doesn't work. So, for example, there are times in the movie where, although you have like two things perhaps running at the same time, so you've got some of the actors, something happening in one place and then another part of the ship or somewhere else, something else is happening, that's all well and good, but if one of those places that things are taking place is actually quite perhaps dramatic or poignant, and the other one is comedy, then flipping from one to the other actually doesn't work so well if you want to sort of maintain the drama in one area or maintain the humour in the other. So it isn't as simple as, well, if two things are happening at the same time, you just put them together, you know. I think the answer there is that if it's looking like a scene is taking too long, then perhaps it should be shortened, or perhaps it's just one cutaway or something like that. So it's been a very good sort of test, and I've only done it for sort of the first half of the movie. So that's been happening, and also, as well as that, I've been moving into what I call second cut. Not a particularly clever title, it's exactly what it says on the tin, it's the second cut. So having cut through the whole movie and produced a 2-hour film, I've gone back now, and I'll be honest, I kind of wasn't really looking forward to it, because as much as I like making films, there's a lot of repetition in terms of what you have to do, and going through all the scenes again, which I've only just kind of done. It felt a little bit like Groundhog Day, so you know, I took a couple of days off and what have you, and then when I got back into it, I actually found that it was much easier than I was anticipating and much quicker, and I think that's because the first time you go through, you have to go through all of the clips, and even though when you break them down into small groups that are just relevant to that particular scene, you still have to go through each one to check it's what you want, all that kind of stuff. But now, with the scene that's already been cut, then a decision has already been made as to what is going to go where. And that doesn't mean that you can't make another decision or reverse a decision, but what it does give you is direction, and that's something that's really important about sort of production leadership and taking a project forward, is that you've got to give you know, direction through effective decision making. Obviously you can't keep going back and forth, but at the same time it's better to do that than to just do nothing and stay and go nowhere, basically. So I've been looking at that, and then just sort of going through each of the scenes, and the first thing I did was just basically tidy it up, just tidy up some of the edits, some of the cuts, the transitions, and I also, although I'm not doing sound work at this stage, I certainly didn't do any sound work in the first cut. This time what I've done is I've took out any duplication of dialogue. So the first cut was very visual, the second cut is still primarily visual, but there's no repetition of dialogue, so the line is only said once, and that has given me some really good direction in terms of what to cut out, and it actually made life very easy to see where the slow elements of the scene were, where the good elements of the scene were, or where it wasn't breathing, where there was too much happening in a too short space of time. So that was very effective, and just by doing that second cut, and I've done half of the film in about 4 days, which is blisteringly fast. I'm amazed, frankly, and that doesn't mean that the film is finished, of course, or that there's no more cutting to be done, but it just shows that, you know, that we've broken the back by doing that first edit, and only now sort of realise just how significant a difference that's made in terms of the edit process. I'm being allowed to be far more creative, far more early on than I thought I might have been, because there's a couple of things have sort of come up with regards to this particular film compared to perhaps our other productions is that the story here is quite complex. It's quite grown up. I don't mean it's like adult theme. I just mean that it's been made, it's been written properly. The previous stuff we've done with things like our Star Wars spoof movies and Doom Raiders, things like that, is that it's quite theatrical and it was funny, so it didn't really matter quite so much in terms of structure. But this one's a lot more complex, and I think I've probably mentioned that before. And that actually creates a whole new level of editing. And I don't mean that like, you know, hey, we're up to the challenge, we can do that. In fact, probably not. It's been a few times where I've really been quite sort of stumped as to where do I go now with this cut, because it's not. This scene might only be four shots long, maybe one shot, and I've got a couple of scenes. It's literally just one shot, and it's where do you put it? And sometimes when it works, it really works. It just flows. And I suppose the good thing is that when it doesn't work, it kind of still stands out. But sometimes, especially with the sequencing of when you cut from one place to another, it isn't very clear. You know it's not right, but you don't know how to fix it. Other problems, so there was a couple of issues. The other one is the lack of VFX, CGI and stuff at this stage, which is as planned. So wasn't unanticipated. But sometimes you're breaking away from live action to CGI and stuff like that, and that's made life a bit complicated when you don't have it. So what I've had to do is put in some stills of the Deliverance and stuff like that, and some sort of concept still imagery, and then sort of move it around in the editing software just to give it some sort of feeling of life. But that's better than nothing. And that I then found, so we have the sound and then we have these visuals, starts to sort of evoke thoughts, creative processes and stuff like that as well, and that's helped a lot as well. So that's a good thing. So although thinking I was applying perhaps first aid to the edit while I'm waiting for visual effects, actually what it was doing was taking the edit forward. The other thing about in terms of the complexity of the film, the characters are more complex than our previous productions because they've been spoofs, and this is a serious movie, albeit action, horror, sci-fi epic. It's a serious film, and the characters have serious backstories, and some of them have serious issues in the movie. And the actors obviously did a really good job in delivering that in their characters. And I just found a few places in how powerful the edit can be. Literally, there's a scene in the movie where a character drops an item, and another character picks it up and gives it back to them. And this item's of particular value, and if this item is revealed and all the rest of it, it could have problems for this particular character. Now, obviously, the character who's trying to hide something knows this, and the other character is oblivious. And what happens is they give the item back, and then the other person who's feeling guilty says thank you, and it's all very sort of, she looks like she's a bit worried and all the rest of it. And this other character isn't reacting at all. It's a bit weird. So he's like, there you go, and the other character's like, well, yeah, thanks. But simply by then having a shot, putting another shot in where the character who's given the document looks away and goes and gets on with something else, and then the other character says thank you, it completely changed the edit. It completely changed the story, the inference. The whole dynamic is that this character now has guilt, and it was so clear that to start with, it's all a bit like, oh, thanks very much, and carry on with the story. And now it's just like this whole sort of, wow, this person's really hiding something here, and this other character still doesn't know, and wasn't that a close shave, and now this character's feeling guilt about the fact that they might have betrayed the other person, and all this kind of thing. And some of this probably doesn't make any sense to you at all. In some ways that's a good thing, because I'm trying to tell you how good the edit can be with one cut without actually telling you what happens in a story. So it's a bit difficult. But the point being was that it was just such a great moment in terms of editing, that just by simply putting in one extra shot, to explain to the audience that the character is just getting back on with business as usual and doesn't think twice about what they've just done, and then the character who's betraying and all the rest of it, has all this guilt. It's just great. It's just really, really good. So I think when the film comes out and you see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But it just shows editing should not be taken lightly, and it's not a case of just slapping it all together and having continuity. And in fact, that's actually another thing that's come up as well. I've been doing a little bit of reading about editing and stuff, and a couple of books here and there, and sort of like, what are your priorities when you edit? What's character is important, emotion, continuity, setting, that kind of stuff. And it's very interesting that some of the rules that sort of come up, and it kind of explains a lot of reasons why there's all these bloopers in movies, because according to at least two sources that I've read, in terms of things like continuity and technical correction, political correction, or whatever, this is technical, where the drink goes up and down when it's continuity, or you break the 180 rule and it's all a bit disorienting and all that kind of stuff. That's all is something you should try and avoid, but at the same time there are more important things like the drama, what the character is doing, what do you want the audience to feel, and it's all about that. So if it's a major technical thing and it breaks the drama, then fine. But if it doesn't really, because you're so engrossed in what's being said or what's happening on the screen, then it doesn't really matter. And that's probably why I think you watch movies and there's continuity problems, because technically they probably could get rid of most of those continuity issues, to do a cutaway, do a close-up, or crop the shot or something like that. But they don't, and they don't because they're obviously, I say obviously, it seems to me that they're putting drama and character ahead of technicality. So doesn't mean you can be complacent, but it's something I've sort of noted and thought, well, okay, well, I'm going to try that then, and I'm going to not worry so much about continuity at this stage. Now, that's not to say that one minute he's got a gun, the next minute it turns into a spear or something like that, and then clearly that's an issue. But it's in terms of maintaining that that disbelief, that the audience doesn't fall into disbelief, and they stay in the story and they don't come out of the story, and that's really important. So that's something I'm trying to sort of apply in the edit at this stage. So I think it's going to be about another week or so, I think, before I'll get through that, and then we're going to start getting a test audience and getting a few people to come in and watch it to see what they think. Do they get it? Do they understand what's going on? Then we're just going to start looking at more again into the visual effects. That guys are still working on the drift spaceships and stuff, so hoping to take that forward as well. But at the moment, we're on track, and the movie's actually looking quite good. It's actually like a proper movie, perhaps not just they go here, then they go here, then they go here, then they go here. There is a journey, an arc, where they go from here and eventually they end up in this position. But there's lots of intertwining bits, and parallels and all that, which, I think is a sign of a good film, that it keeps the audience interested. And I think that's where we are with this. That's certainly where it's going to go. So I have to say, I'm very pleased at the moment, and hopefully we'll keep that going. That's it.